Recording live from my headhunting stronghold in Annapolis, Maryland, and beyond. This is Season 2. Every episode is open to discussion for recruiters, headhunters, and talent pros, so feel free to participate or just sit back and listen as we bring you topics, discuss tips, tricks, and more for both industry dinosaurs and noobs alike. So please like and subscribe. And now let's start with the Recruiter Roundtable Season 2, starting your own firm or going solo. Welcome, everyone. Ernie, Kelly, our co-host, and all the people that show up. We appreciate it. So on today's thing, I put in the notes of the event what we looked at, opening your own firm, right? Bare bones minimum $200, and then like the medium, middle of the road, kind of like where I am, the $800, $900, $1,000 a month, and then $2,000. But what I thought we would do is Ernie and Kelly, myself, are going to share like where we were and how we did this, right? And you can kind of get a perspective of what it took for us to make our moves, and then the rest of the panel, you guys can chime in, ask questions, concerns, or share your stories. We're kind of do it that way. So let's start with Ernie. We'll go to Kelly, and then I'll finish up, and then we'll open it up for discussion. So go ahead.
Yeah, my company's Next Level Executive Search. We specialize in the food industry, and I started doing this solo by myself in 1998, around there. Prior to that, I was a VP of HR for about 15 years. Went up the ranks. And so I decided that one day I got fired one too many times and decided I needed to be on my own. And that's when I had a recruiter who was in LA, and this was before the internet, before anything like that, probably before even where you had to pay for your own telephone, okay, your long distance. So I talked to a recruiter here in Chicago, and he lived in LA, and I asked him to find me another VP of HR job, and he says, "Why don't you become a recruiter?" I said, "What the hell, I'll learn it." He said he'll teach me, and we talked every day on the phone, and I ended up staying a recruiter. A couple of times I jumped off, went into a couple of jobs, came back because I figured that I did not like to be told what to do. So I'm not a good employee anymore. I'm a terrible employee. So I started doing that, worked for myself for about 20 years. And then recently I ended up adding people. And so now I got a group of five people that are with me, and we work as a co-op. So, but I wanted to just mention, if you're going to think about going on your own today, what I just wanted to say is you got to believe in yourself. You got to have confidence. People tell you to save 6 months worth of savings to start and all this other stuff. You got to be freaking crazy to become a recruiter. And sometimes you have the money and sometimes you don't. But I didn't have the money. I just did it. And then you got to be able to learn every day. You have to learn how to use the phone, get off that texting stuff that everybody wants you to use. And like your kids talk to each other over the dinner table, texting each other. No, you talk. And if you call people and you talk to them, you'll do all right. And then the other thing too is you got to learn how to use training groups like this. And people are here, and every one of you guys, the nice part about it is I can call any of you because you're now my friends, and I know you and love you guys, and we share. So that's the one thing I want to make sure people understand is this group is part of your learning process. And anybody here, you can find them, they'll talk to you, they'll give you everything. And that's what we do. But the other thing I just want to mention, last thing I want to mention is this. A lot of personalities in here. Don't try to be a Domenic, or don't try to be a Tom Alassio, don't try to be a Tim or Chris or anybody, a Kelly.
Don't try to be me.
Just be yourself. And yourself comes through, because if you try to change your personality because all of a sudden you want to be the Howard Stern of recruiting, it ain't you. So just be yourself, be sincere, and you'll do all right. And listen to Dominic's latest recording on the Elite Recruiter. He does a good job of explaining a lot of this stuff. So anyway, that's it for me. Go ahead,
Kelly.
So I was a strategy consultant with Accenture, one of the big 5 consulting companies, traveling 100% and going into companies like the University of California medical centers and telling them how to run their programs. I created all of their outreach that I don't know if it's still used, but at one time was used through all of the University of California sites, and teaching their people who refuse to make phone calls and refuse to do, basic things that we do as agency recruiters, to do those things and not to be petrified of it. So after I couldn't travel that much anymore, I have a family and it just was too hard. So I decided to just start doing it myself. I already knew how to do it. I got a CRM, which was Interseller. I had been building my LinkedIn account for years, I think since almost the time that LinkedIn started, had, thousands upon thousands of connections. And I just started doing what we do, which is MPCing, reaching out to clients, doing what we all do, and it's all worked out. So I can't recommend it highly enough. It's not rocket science, but you do have to have a work ethic in order to make good money. You have to be on the phone. You have to put in the hours, and you got to do what's required. And if you don't, then you're like this person on Facebook that is whining about how they haven't had any work and, doesn't know what to do, doesn't know how to run their desk. So you got to know those things, have a sub niche, be prepared for downturns and so forth.
Oh yeah, they'll say they've tried everything. I've done everything. Like, well, no, you haven't.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, I think it's just a good forum to whine about, what you think about the government or whatever. But the bottom line is, there are people out there that are killing it. Tom Alacio, Ernie, we're all, we're doing well, and it doesn't matter who's in government. I did well during COVID. So, you learn how to, if you really want to be in this business, you'll learn how to do it, and you won't blame other people for your downfalls.
Well, and Kelly, that adaptability is such a big deal, like, especially if you've been doing it over a long period of time, like it's been 20 years for me, is like recruiting is a series of mini gold rushes, and they don't, none of them last. And you just have to, the skill is in finding where's the next one. And like, you have to pay attention to what's going on in the world, what's going on in business. Like I made a ton of money during COVID because I shifted my focus entirely to manufacturing and like just bread and butter stuff that still needed to be made. And that's how I survived and actually did like better than I thought I would. But yeah, you're right. Like you have to be able to recognize like your value proposition changes when the market's flooded with candidates. Your value proposition as a recruiter is different than when there's none. And you know how to shift and reposition yourself to employers and candidates by knowing like which way the wind's blowing. So anyway, just echoing.
Exactly. For the latecomers, Huff and Maricr. So basically, it's going off on your own, going solo. And I posted what I thought costs were going to be. So instead of talking about that, Ernie, Kelly, and me are like how we did it, and then open it up for discussion. Others can share how they did it, ask questions, comments, etc. So I'm real quick going to go on that, and then we'll open up the content. And I also asked that everybody please post their LinkedIn. One second, Kel. Please post a LinkedIn URL in the chat, so I have those for because I want to start making sure I recognize everybody who shows up. I want to make I recognize. Hey, I appreciate it and recognize you, Kelly.
It's fading out. I don't know if
I'm
it's
fading
just
out.
me that. Yeah, so you'll talk for a while and then it'll
freeze.
Yeah, you keep freezing. Are you able to fix that or?
Yeah, let me shut down. I got.
Let's start a GoFundMe for Tom and his internet setup.
It's too many monitors.
I have 700 tabs open. Give me a second here.
It's because he's using Apple. That's why.
Yep, it's those Macs.
Yeah, it's
unplug a few of those monitors too.
Let me make sure I got.
It's a lot of bandwidth being used because he has to look at himself while he's doing this.
And also, I just updated
image.
to Sequoia, so the newest operating system, but it's beta, so I don't know what's going on.
Hey, Chris, how did you start your business? What led you to going out on your own?
So I know Tom didn't do his story yet, but I guess since you asked,
okay if I do it real quick and then we'll
go ahead. I don't want to get out of order.
Because I was already.
Sorry.
Okay. Sorry. So I was at Peters Consulting Group 14 years. Used to be a bartender. They hired me, And I was the very first employee hired and the very last employee that left, right? So we went through a downturn. The boss went crazy, couldn't manage this kind of out of that downturn. A lot of people quit, got fired. And one day, in March, I'm like, what am I doing? And I had a hardcore non-compete. So I packed everything up, put it in. He looked at me like I was crazy, and I moved 1,000 miles away. I rented an office in Bethesda, Maryland, a shared office with 2 other people. Used the computer they had there, came with the office. It was $600 a month. I had Google Sheets, Google Gmail. I ended up paying $20 for GoDaddy so I could get Thomas at PR Search Inc. A random like generic website, and just sent an email to every client I had and said, I'm off on my own now. If you need me, call me. And I made my first deal on April 17th for $17,500 with a panel company in Michigan, and the rest is history from there. So, it was going back to what I did before. I just hit the phones hardcore on April 1st is the day that I moved up there. On April Fool's Day, I hit the phones hardcore and just called all my clients, tried to get business, stayed in contact with candidates, and just slowly from there, just kept doing it. And eventually, I'm here. I am today. But it was back to what Kelly and Ernie both said. It was going back to those basics and just doing what needed to be done to make the business succeed. And now I have a similar co-op as Ernie. We got 5 people. Things are going well. Tony works with us. He's knocking it out of the park. So it's all comes down to is doing what you need to do to make this business happen. And we all know how to do it, or we have the tools and the people that will help you to do it. Yeah. So that's my story.
And it's amazing what happens when you take action. Right? Like when you actually do something, it's like, oh, surprise, surprise. I made a bunch of calls and I started reaching out to a bunch of people and things happened and I made a placement, right? Like it, sometimes we all get
the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah. The more we get in our funks and we get in have our lows, right? And you feel like, it's, how it is in recruiting. Like it's good news, it's bad news, it's good news, it's bad news. And it's your mood reflects whatever the last phone call was, right? But then like, you could have a bit of a slump, and if you're just like, okay, well, how did I get here in the first place? All right, I'm going to reach out to the people I know. I'm going to call this place. I'm going to call that place. And the next thing you know, surprise, surprise. Like you said, the harder I work, the luckier I get. So yeah, that back to basic stuff. Like a lot of times we're doing something for a long time and we like try to like cherry pick and go like the easy route and think we got it all figured out. And we forget that sometimes it's just, just like professional sports players, not that I'm comparing
Tiger Woods,
but you got to practice,
yeah.
Right?
Tiger
You still
Woods
have to do the fundamentals.
When he couldn't do it, he went back to the fundamentals. There's a guy who was the champion of all champions, and he was struggling and went back to the fundamentals. Like, what am I doing wrong? I know how to do this. How do I start from the beginning? And that's what he did to bring himself back up. And that's what I do when I get, like you said, when you get to a funk. The fundamentals work. The foundation training of Next Level Exchange, that works.
Or if you're a solo and you want to take a vacation and you want to scale things down for a week or so that you can punch out a bit, things are going to slow down. That you know that the phone's not going to ring as much, but you're trying to do that on purpose so you can relax, take a few days or a week off with your kid or whatever at the beach. And then you just, like when I was away in like late June, I slowed everything down on purpose. I didn't start any new calls. I did tee up a bunch of things for when I got back, but I was like, I wasn't worried because I've seen enough cycles of up and down. I'm like, I know what I got to do. I'm like, when I get back, I know what I got to do. Yeah. I filled my plate back up and whatever, life goes on. But like,
and we have access to our phones, our iPads. I mean, I can do anything anywhere. If it's an emergency or something happens, I can handle it.
Oh yeah, and I can, and what I tried to do too is I scheduled a lot of my outreach to be like the Thursday and Friday of the week I was away, so that as I receive responses, I could be like, oh, what's your Monday look like? You know what I mean?
Nice.
So that that was fine. And I just you like pace it out. But I'm answering Kelly's question from earlier, so I don't have quite as dramatic of a story as Tom's. Tom's got like a really good one. So I got into recruiting because I thought it sounded easy, right? Because none of us none of us on purpose. And we're like, oh, I was in college and I was helping like organize some speaker panel, and one of them was someone who ran a local recruiting firm, and they were like, you ever thought being a recruiter? And I was like thinking, oh, just interview a bunch of people. I pick one. Sounds like a fucking great job. I'm like, sign me up. And of course that is not at all what it is. So like I signed, but then my first year doing it, I had doubled my base working there, and I was like, oh, okay, like there's something to this, right? And then I worked there at a small local firm a couple of years. I was like their second employee. And then I learned a lot there. And then I went to work for a national firm for like 3 years. And then what happens to a lot of people when they work for a big, huge company is you're at some point a number. I worked for a company that was based out of Philly that was like, we have an office in Albany. And, at a certain point, like the wind blew the wrong way. And I and some other recruiters were out of a job because it was a company that did a lot of like large scale, like RPO stuff. So when they lost a big client, they were relatively short-sighted and they just get rid of all the recruiters that were working on that client. So then I'm sitting there with a friend of mine who was a fellow recruiter, and I still remember we were sitting in a Moe's just having a burrito and bullshit. And he's like, why don't we just start our own firm? And I was like, why don't we? I got nothing to lose. I was lucky because thank God that big company did have a decent severance. So my vacation payout and my commission payout, I had like 20, 30 grand in the bank. So I wasn't like sweating too hard. And I was like 8 or 9 or something like that, and no kids yet or anything. So I was like, let's give it a shot. Worst case, we go find jobs. We started that up. We worked, the two of us billed like 900,000 between the two of us in a year, working just day and night, going crazy, like for just drug craze, chimps,
That's
whatever.
awesome.
And then we were like, let's start hiring people and let's do this. And then that's where I learned that I'm not in here. I learned how to be a manager the hard way. I hired a recruiter. It worked out great. We clicked. So I like, let's hire more. And then I realized that you have to manage different people different ways. And I was like, what the hell's wrong with the other? Why can't they be like Pat? Right. And so in the 10 years we had that firm, we had some pretty good successes. And we were, from 2009 to 2019, did a lot of work, had a lot of fun, but also like learned a lot. And I learned a lot about myself too, which one of them was like my partner really wanted to scale. We really wanted to grow, get to other cities, have like 100 recruiters working for us. I really wanted to stay boutique. I really liked being in the action. As we grew, I started to dislike getting away from like the work. And that's just what I liked. And so in 2019, he was getting divorced. My kid was on the way. There's just a lot of other factors. And we decided to part ways. And I went solo. And that was September 2019. So my timing was amazing because we had a building and several employees, and I wound all that down like before 2020. So I was like,
nice.
like, I was like, holy good timing. And then just, the last 5 years, it's been, I usually have a virtual assistant. Occasionally I'll have an intern or whatever. That's, So that I learned that I really like being in the work. I really like being involved directly with the clients. I like being involved. Like I'm not a good delegator. I'm a control freak, right? So I got to be in the action. And I learned that about myself, right? So like, because we're all good at certain things, and I learned that while the path of like that you're taught like growing up is like, oh, you should want to be in management. You should want to like grow and like whatever. And it's actually not the path for everyone. And my wife has been like, who's known me for 11 or 12 years, is like, the last few years, you're like the least stressed I've ever seen you. The only thing that always stressed me out the most was employees. And I don't mean like them, like individually, but like the weight that it carried for me of like, I got to feed all these people, and that was actually one of the things that really helped going solo. I'll say, like, I did have to maintain a much bigger pipeline for a decade. I had to bring in a few million a year in business. And once it became just me, business development did get easier because I had a lot of people I could tap into from all those years. Anyway,
your point about when you left, you were 20. So, and Ernie saying that we're crazy. I had less than 30 grand, right? And a wife, 3 kids, 3 horses.
You were Cortez,
Florida.
Burn the ships behind us.
Yep, that's it. I moved. I just said I got to make this work. I mean, if I hadn't made that deal in April, I don't know what I would have done. Like that was one of those things. Like because I used the money to buy the stuff for get up there. Plus I had bills. Got $10,000 a month in bills down in Florida where my family is, and I'm living with my brother-in-law, paying $600 for an office. And I was like, I got to make deals. There was no in that video that I did with Ben, there's no plan B. There was no plan. I had to make this work or I was screwed.
Yeah. That's amazing. It's amazing what that kind of motivation can drive. And I'll admit, like, I actually The
I
first
don't
couple.
suggest it for everybody, but I'm one of those risk takers. So.
Well, but you know what's funny too is after you
Yeah,
get there, like once you do get like start upping your billings, like the other thing that's interesting is you can get to a point where you start to get like a little lazy, right? Because you'll get like at one point I got like a couple of years ago, I got kind of fat and happy and wasn't trying as hard because I'd billing more than I'd ever billed in my life and individually. And I had to find new like motivation. And of course, you know, house projects and a long list on the fridge and a bunch of other things will help with that. But and a kid will help with that too.
Especially if you have a home office, they're knocking on the door, wanting to do this and do that. Yeah, Nick, Buono, you said you were in the same situation. Let's hear your story. I want to hear if you did the same thing I did, and you're on mute, so you need to turn yourself on mute.
Just praying.
Yeah, that's where I am now. Your story is my story. That's why I love listening to you guys. And you asked about your opinion about what you guys are doing and the channel. And I'm also in 2 other groups, spending a fortune for training.
You can give us the money.
What's that?
You can give us the money.
We'll
We'll put it towards Tom's internet.
spread it around. I don't have to make money. I don't have kids. So.
What were you doing before this?
My story is a little different. I had a previous business that I lost over COVID, and that really tore me up. Not easy to deal with. Not easy to deal with. My mind started messing with me and all that other craziness. So I had an ex-customer of mine that we became friends, and she was in recruiting. So at first I was reluctant. I don't know if this is for me. I don't want to be in sales, yada, yada. So on and so forth. We started, I was doing training, and she's great. It was wonderful. I just think it was like a roller coaster ride going round and round, and we weren't getting anywhere. So during that time, the start of the new year, I started thinking about it. And in February, I started building my website while I was still working. And just planning things together. So I'm about 3.5 months in now, 4 months, we'll say. And the second month, I made 2 recruits. And last month, I made 1.
Congratulations.
And thank you. And I was like, I could do this. This is great. But then, like you said, you got fat. Yeah. And I slowed down the progress a little bit, and now I'm struggling. I don't have a job. Now I don't have a job.
Because you got out of that mode, and all of a sudden you reaped a little bit of benefit, and then because you didn't keep tending to it, all of a sudden you're like, oh shoot.
Exactly. And my kids and my wife and my family and my friends, they're all very expensive. So
now you're divorced or what?
No, not yet. She's still with me. She's still playing along. She's a champ. God bless her. And I'm trying to get her on the team because I'm at the point now. It's hard to manage everything all by yourself.
Very hard.
So especially the stuff that I loathe, like bullying searches and you know, the whole background scene that we're supposed to do on our off time. On our off time, I'm tired and I want to be with my kids. I know that doesn't always work. Anyway, so what I'm doing now, I'm in recruiting for accounting and finance. I was in the field for manufacturing, and I think Ernie, you do manufacturing as well. Yeah.
Yep.
So one of these days we're going to have a heart-to-heart. So my father had a business, and you know, I'm the spoiled kid, and I plugged along for over 17 years in the field. I was training to take over as comptroller. And what happened was the partner got sick, and we wound up selling. So then I'm left like, oh, what the heck do I do? So I bought a restaurant, the dumbest thing ever, with a bar.
Oh, wow.
I love it. I love the people. I hated the employees, the fly-by-nighters, I call them, that don't care. While I'm dishing out the checks and they're whatever. long story. You guys all know that story.
Oh yeah, I worked in a restaurant business before I was a headhunter, so I know that business well.
There you go, Tom. After that, the business actually went up in flames, it caught on fire, and I'm like, shit, all over again. Listening to the radio, I heard about Mathnasium. I don't know if any of you have heard about Mathnasium, Math Learning Center. So I decided, hey, what the heck, we'll do that. So my wife and I did that. My wife has her master's in math, and we started, but it was an hour away, hour drive, 2-hour drive a day, I should say. It went great, but then it was awesome. I loved it, and I loved the kids, loved teaching, but COVID, and then and here I am now. So that's my story. I can go in more detail, but
who lost their home to a hurricane?
Who did?
Somebody did. Someone. Let me see. John, you recently lost your home to a hurricane, and are you able to recruit now because of it?
I am in my top half of the home, my bottom half. The whole bottom floor is coming, so I have to. Walls are open right now, sprayed for mold, all that kind of stuff. But yeah, no. So I was just commenting on new house projects that I have to spend money on. So I'm feeling like I need to post some more dues.
2 years ago, we had a tornado come through, and a friend of mine lost her whole house and 40 other homes. It was crazy. I'm in New Jersey. That's not supposed to happen here.
We had 10 tornadoes touch down this last weekend, somewhere around here, little ones here and there in Chicagoland. So, yeah.
Well, just real quick comment. I haven't been able to do BD for the past 2.5 weeks because I had COVID and then the storm. So, like you, Nick, I feel like I ran out of jobs because I closed them all. I'm like, yay! But now I'm like, crap. I left are so hard that I'm like, I don't even want to work on these. Are so hard. So
yeah, it's hard, and you take so much pride in everything you do. Even when I started working at a dishwasher at a young age before you were even supposed to work, and I loved it. That's how I love the restaurant business. And even then, it was just instilled in me. I did whatever I was told, and I did it to the best I could. And I worked overtime. I didn't complain. And that's what we did.
Doing the best you can.
Not like that.
I was saying, Nick, like that's the only thing that stresses me out is letting people down. So like, I don't get stressed about the money. I don't get stressed about anything else. I get stressed about letting customers down. If I told somebody I'm going to do it for them, like that's the thing that like eats at me more than anything. And even if it was just like I had this one backfill that was plaguing me for like a few months that I closed down like a month ago. And it was the most stressful thing of all for me because it was like I knew I was friends with the owner. I'd hired a couple people for him. It was just one of those things that was dragging out, and it finally got done. And I actually had a point where like I was like I just took like a couple of days and didn't even work on anything because I was like I don't even care if I don't make any money this month. I just need to close this out, right? And that was you know the feeling, right? Like because you want to just do it.
I have one of those right now too.
That weighing on your conscience is like more important than money in like that moment. It's
exactly what you said. Like you feel like you're letting your employees down, and that stress, and the customers as well. You build relationships with these people, and you see them every day or just about every day. And that is the hardest part. It's not about me. It was never about me. It's about them.
Yeah.
One thing I realized that I'm a good recruiter, right? I'm very good at what I do. I am a horrible businessman.
That's what you tell us.
I am a horrible businessman. Thanks, Chris. I didn't run a business. I didn't understand. Like that was probably my biggest issue starting my firm. Is like I didn't know anything about running a business, right? And never even thought to invest. It was like, oh, I'll get an LLC, I'll do this, like, and then you all this stuff that the back end that we have to take care of. Really, that stressed the hell out of me more than I think than anything.
It happens in every profession too. Every profession has that. People are very good at the work.
Yeah, I had no idea how to run a business. I knew how to recruit, and I just had to stumble from there. Has anybody here? I think Zach might be like fall into this category. Does anybody here start a recruiting firm that had no idea what recruiting was, had just heard about it, or maybe had gotten recruited? Right? I'm not talking about like me. who worked for a search firm. Well, I was a bartender, then I was a headhunter. Then I went off on my own. Has anybody here started their firm from scratch that never had no idea what recruiting was and just thought, I can try this? Nick, Sibian, anybody else?
Yeah.
Jordan?
There are a couple of them.
Hear from a couple of those because that's a really interesting.
Yeah, so everybody else at one point or another either worked for a staffing firm or worked in HR or something like that. Is that what everybody else is saying? They all had some type of relative experience in our industry. So there's only Nick, Jordan, and Obsidian. You're the three that had. Oh, and Donna too.
I think Zach.
Donna, aren't you? Wait a second, Donna. Don't you work in talent acquisition now?
I know.
You're on mute. You're on mute.
Unmute yourself. There you go.
You're still on mute, Donna. There you go. Try that now. No, we still can't hear you. And Zach.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
If
Donna can't, if you guys can't hear Donna, I can just quickly give you my story. Yeah, like basically, I came from an advertising background, so I worked in ad agencies for about a decade, and I was doing contract work closer to the end of my career in advertising. And it's kind of a little personal, but my mom was very sick. She was in the hospital for a year, and she was transitioning coming out of the hospital back to home. And so as one of my contracts was coming up, I decided, hey, I want to spend some time, try to help my mom come back to, to transition her back into kind of society and with my brothers and my sibling and my family. And during that period, I also wanted to explore some businesses. So I started looking at different types of businesses, and I was networking with people. And I ended up networking with somebody who actually used to be a gym partner of mine. And he used to go into companies, and when they do like team leadership, like gatherings, and they go into a company, like they'll go to a Pepsi and they'll kind of like show how you can get along better with your coworkers.
Team building events.
Team building event, exactly. So he did that for a while, and somehow his business transformed into recruiting. And so we were just catching up, and he was telling me about his recruiting experience. So I didn't really think too much about it. I wasn't like the spark didn't fly off right immediately or anything. We went out for lunch. He was telling me about it. And I guess like in the subconscious of me, like it just kept on coming back. I was like, oh, that's kind of an interesting business model. Or like, what he's doing, I'm a people's person, or like, it checks off a lot of the boxes that, were important to me. One was being like, remote. Another was being, your own business, not having a cap as to like, what you're capable of doing. Another thing was creativity. Like, you talk to however many people are on this call, and although there's foundational stuff, you can be extremely creative in this industry as to how you represent yourself, how you get clients, all that type of stuff. So it checked off all these boxes. And then in short, I put together what I thought was a business plan. I did research. I watched, Ben Nader, who is, like on YouTube. I watched all these different things on YouTube and just kind of consumed all this information as much as possible. And then I said to myself, okay, I'm ready to go. I'm ready to launch. I'm ready to go to market. And when I was ready to go, I said to myself, I kind of got cold feet, if I'm being honest. I said, as much as I think I know what I'm doing, I actually don't think I know what I'm doing. And so
most of us have imposter syndrome regularly. So
yeah, so it definitely had that. So what I decided, and I've told this to people on this call before, and people have made fun of me, but I think it was extremely valuable, extremely worth it, was I ended up investing in a recruiting program. And it was a significant amount of money at the time. I think relatively to a lot of people here, I think it would be a significant amount of money. And so, yeah, I invested in this program. And to me, the math was just, hey, I'm going to learn from people that have done it, I'm going to be in a paid community with other people around me who's striving to kind of do something similar. I'm going to be able to watch, video modules and all that type of stuff. And the math was, you know what, I'm gonna invest in this, and one placement will pay for it, right? And in this instance, I did that, and I got traction, I got clients, and then within the first client that I placed I got 2 roles with them, and I ended up I think billing close to just under $50,000. I think it was like around $45,000. So to me, that was freaking mind blown. I was mind blown. I had never seen a check that big in my life.
I remember you showing us one of your checks on one of your first check on a call way back.
Yeah.
Remember that, Tom? Remember that? That was awesome. I was so excited for you.
Yeah, exactly. I remember that, because I still have that check. So when I went to the bank, I asked them, "Can I cash this? But I want to keep it." So I kept it, and it's still on my table. But this reminds me, I got to put it back on my wall here because I'm slowing down a little bit. So I want a couple more. I want a couple more of those checks. But the last thing I'll say is, this year I'm about 2.5 years into it, and some people have amazing successes. You'll see things online, and people are like, within my first year, I never knew anything about recruiting, and I built, $300,000, whatever it is, right? And some people have amazing starts to their career. For me, even within investing, in this program, it takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. You have a lot of ups, a lot of downs. You learn so much. The first offer I ever even got, so excited, and I got hit with a counter offer. Talk about introduction to the industry. There's nothing like thinking you're about to get paid and you get a counter offer. So that was that was crazy. But this is I'm year 2.5 to me, and I've officially surpassed the amount of salary that when I was getting paid by an employer. So to me, that's so cool, so amazing.
And I bet you're working less.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm working. I wouldn't say I'm working less, but it's a different type of work.
Feels less
right?
like work.
It's a lot more rewarding, and the bullshit, the stress that comes with it is a lot more acceptable, because I know it's I'm building my dreams. I'm working for myself. To Ernie's point, he hates. He said, he can't work for other people. It's exactly the same reason why I'm in this industry.
You're forever ruined.
Yeah,
you can't get a job again. You're done.
Yeah, never in a million years. I'm stubborn and all this stuff, right? So we're halfway into the year, and I'm clearly having my best year to date. I'm just on a good trajectory, and so that's my story. Thanks for listening.
Donna, did you get your mic
I
working?
don't know. Can you hear me?
All right, we can hear it now. So we'll do Donna, and then do Scott at Obsidian next. Go ahead, Donna. I want to hear the people who had no experience.
Yeah. So I spent 30 years in the retail industry. So I ran corporations, VP of sales, VP of stores. I had thousands of employees, and I recruited within that industry, but I never recruited that was not my primary position. I may have recruited somebody who worked for me at a different company and came over, and because we had a relationship or whatever. That was pretty much the extent of it. I was very successful at that part of it, but that was about the extent of my recruiting kind of, industry. Again, just 30 years in sales, 30 years in people. I always thought it was an intriguing industry. I always thought I could do really well in it. I always enjoyed it from what I could see and when I was able to recruit. And so then it was January 2020, a colleague of mine had gone over to a franchise, and we were talking, and I said, I think that's what I should do, because, I think like Zachary said, mine was a little bit different, because joining a franchise is very different than taking some courses. I wish I would have taken the courses. But at the end, that's neither here nor there. But so I joined a franchise and kind of decided that I was going to do what I do, right? I'm going to do retail. I'm going to do brick and mortar, a little bit of e-commerce, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And so I opened the business January 2020, but we all know what happened a couple months right there. So I spent my first year literally not working, like not having a paycheck, and then not really knowing what the hell I was doing in the recruiting industry because everything shut down for a good year, as everyone knows. So I just kind of dug into it in my own way. I mean, just started reading, learning, going through LinkedIn. I had a ton of connections, started kind of putting people into different, buckets and kind of getting ready for everything to pass. Well, everything really didn't pass in the retail industry, unfortunately, because it's a tough industry. I had some good clients in the past 3 years. I've been doing this now for about 4. But it was kind of like, fail, pick yourself up and succeed. Fail, pick yourself up and succeed. And that's kind of how I kind of did my entire career. So it was not new to me. And so, kind of fast forward to where I'm at now, I am running a pretty successful business, but I am also a little bit in transition as well, moving out of the retail industry. Always will have those clients, but definitely picking up some other different levels of industry as well. So, I mean, it was kind of like, if at first you don't succeed, try again. That's kind of how my past 4 years have been. It's exhausting. But I do love what I do. I love my clients. I love my candidates, and I just keep pressing on. I'm waiting for that golden year. I am waiting for that golden year to happen, and it will, but it hasn't. I don't know if it has quite yet.
Are you still a member of the Global Recruiters Network?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So just to clarify, she joined a franchise like Management Recruiters or Sanford Rose or any of those, and they take anywhere from 3 to 10% of your yearly billings. 5 or 10? 10, and then they're supposed to provide training, and you're on their website, so you have a split network and maybe discounts on applicant tracking systems and discounts on monster postings. I know that when we were at my old company, Management Recruiters, they got discounts, on Monster. They got discounts on a lot of things. And I think to Ernie's point, we got discounts on our phone bill. I remember the phone bill coming in, it'd be like this thick, and they would go through it, and it would be 3 cents a minute for the long distance callers, or 2 cents a minute, where I was paying 5 cents at home. So that's what some of the And it's a good for someone like Donna, who was a executive, right? She can leverage a lot of her past experience. You'll find that like a guy who's an executive vice president at IBM will buy a Management Recruiters franchise or a Sanford Rose franchise because they'll teach him how to leverage all that relationships they've had for the last 30 years in retail, the last 30 years in whatever, right? So that's kind of how a lot of people get into these franchise organizations.
I think for me, it was more of industry, because I had the knowledge, I had the, the chops, I had the skill set. Definitely GRN, helped with all of that to a certain level as well. Could I have done it on my own? Probably, but there was some support and definitely discounts first year only, then it stopped. But at the end of the day, I think my challenge really came from the industry and not really, and being challenged in terms of finding retail clients that we're looking to hire versus looking to lay off.
Have you looked at any contacts in your industry that went on to work in other industries? Like they were a VP of marketing or HR in a retail organization when you knew them, but maybe now they're at a manufacturing company or they're in some other space. Like that could be like an angle to look at in your contacts, and maybe that could lead somewhere. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, that's actually a great angle, and I have looked at that. Some of them have gone into sales, marketing, e-commerce, but that's the same kind of issue as retail. It's just retail, e-commerce. I don't know if anybody on here does that, but it's definitely challenging. So I mean, to be honest, I've kind of moved into the packaging industry, which is something that I definitely had way back in college and, studied a little bit, always had my family's in the business, in the packaging industry. So, I kind of put my feelers out there and got my first big client that I'm working with now, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
That's a good
Packaging is
industry,
great.
'cause
I worked
yeah.
with a couple, like a company that does and other packages, like a couple of companies that were in like North Jersey that do package. I mean, yeah, that there could be a lot of opportunity there, and there's so many companies in that space, and in like related, like that ecosystem that you could
Absolutely
wiggle your
Yeah.
way
And
into.
also, like manufacturing, it's a manufacturing or similar, so they need maintenance.
They need
They need
engineers.
production people. They need sales. They need marketing. And I mean, there's a whole plethora of categories you could jump into packaging. And that's why I like about manufacturing. I do some work.
Was there a third person that we're waiting to hear speak now?
Yes, Scott Livingston at Obsidian Recruitment.
Good
He's
job,
the guy.
Donna.
He's the
Come
new.
on, Ernie,
kid
we're
from
trying to help
UK.
Donna. What the hell, man?
Thanks, Ernie.
That was the hook. You're done. Like,
You know, when she started talking about packaging, I didn't know what she was talking about. You know, the packaging stuff. You know,
I will say that, like, to Tom's
You
point, if you
know,
let's say you hire like an accounting manager for that packaging company, and then you talk to a bunch of other controllers and stuff, and then all of a sudden you can pivot and say, like, what other companies need controllers? And then boom, now you're in that direction. Like,
Right.
because to build off of kind of what Tom was saying, you can organically evolve towards something. You might not specialize in a couple areas you didn't plan on. It's just kind of worked out that way.
Yeah.
Being able to recycle some of the people you talked to for that opportunity and see where else they could go.
Yeah. I feel like the opportunity to do that is much better than, you know, where I was. I was kind of spinning my wheels a little bit in the retail industry, to be honest.
Scott, you're on mute.
you have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay, so tell us your story
Yeah, I'm fairly
from
new to recruit.
zero to new.
Yeah. I started last month, so I'm relatively new.
Oh, wow.
I've only just registered a limited liability company. I'm also at the moment trying to get myself into IT as well. So get myself into a new career and also starting a new business in recruiting, which I've never done before. No experience, so I've really took myself into the deep end. However, I have got like 10 people wanting me to find them jobs from various sectors, from VP to IT and software people. So if anyone's interested in connecting up and maybe helping me find them jobs and we would work something out, then that'd be brilliant. Like
Everybody in England.
Where are you from? You sound like you're from Jersey or somewhere.
I'm from England, yeah.
So I've always wondered you have, because we're right to work and at will employment. You guys have employment contracts and whatnot there, so it's a little bit differently in terms of a person can't just up and quit a job willy nilly, can they? Or is that a preconceived notion I have?
I'm not too sure, to be honest with you. I think it depends on your type of work and the contract, but yeah, I suppose it depends on the contract, I reckon.
Zach and I were talking about this in Canada. They have contracts. We don't have contracts here, right? It's all at will employment. You can be fired for any reason other than Title VII.
Also, actually, just one interesting thing about recruiting, actually, that's happening in Canada right now. In Ontario, they passed a law that you actually have to have a license now to recruit, which is
really.
Yeah, it's.
Is there a test?
Super fresh. No, it's not a test. There's not a test. Well, basically what the test is, you have to provide certain documentations to see that your taxes are up to speed, that they're up to date. And then they charge, I think it's like $750 a year. So like, I never heard that like any like cities or countries started to regulate.
$750 that's not the end of the world.
Not the end of the world.
They were trying to pass 25,000, weren't they?
Yeah, initially they wanted to have like,
it was a bond though.
Yeah,
right?
You had to have access to like $25,000, like a $25,000 loan. But yeah, this is brand new. But I just wanted to share that with all y'all.
Because I feel like our industry as a whole, and I'm talking about the U.S. now, it would be beneficial to have some, like at least the minimum that a real estate agency has, right? You know, bonding board and have to pass some basic literacy test that you know what the hell you're doing before you pick up the phone and be a recruiter, because anybody can do this. And imagine if real estate agents were just like us, right? Every time there was a housing boom, every idiot and their mother would have a sign outside saying they were a real estate agent. And I know there are a lot of real estate agents, but at least I got to pass the test. And that's where we are in recruiting. It's like anybody, anywhere, anytime could just say, oh, I think I'm going to be a recruiter. And we ended up with 10% fees, and I get used to recruiter, and they screwed me, and the guy lasted 3 days, and he stole my wife and killed the dog, and yada yada yada. Anyway, that's just my. I can go on for hours on that one because it just drives me insane.
You know,
does anybody else want to share their story of dread, leaving an agency or leaving another recruiting firm and starting your own? Let's have Huff. I always like Huff stories. Go ahead, Huff.
So I actually got into recruiting by accident. I was referred to a firm, and they said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm married. I've got one child, one on the way. My wife works at Coke headquarters. She's been there 13 years and she's quitting. I need to make 6 figures. What do you got?" And they said, "Well, we have this one opportunity." And then they said, "What would you think about recruiting?" I said, I don't know. Tell me more. Well, I was fortunate to join a firm that went from $6 to $200 million. They recently sold after 40 years for a huge amount of money.
Who was this?
What's that?
What was the firm?
Matrix Resources here in Atlanta. And so the 5 founders were great people. I had the opportunity to learn the business right the first time. Their ethics were second to none in an industry that sometimes has a lot of gray areas. I was there for 5 years. I had a 20-page contract or agreement, 6 pages of it, which was non-compete related. I was 27 years old. I didn't really understand it, but they hired me, put me through this profile, and the profile basically said, "Don't hire him." And normally it didn't suggest that. It would say, here are the pros, here are the cons. And
I can see that.
But they said, "Don't hire him because his ethics, his standards or morals are so high, he would probably have trouble marketing a fallible product." Well, I did 3 times what they expected, and they used my profile to hire everyone after that. And so it's kind of a good success story. But the good people, I left to go out on my own, but I didn't know what I was really going to do because I was scared to death of competing with them because of this 20-page agreement that I didn't understand. And I ended up getting solicited by 3 of my clients, SAP America, Informix Software, and Accenture, Anderson Consulting. And I ended up saying yes to all 3 of them and hiring people to help me work on these contracts. I was the internal recruiter. And, I didn't have any money. So at the time, it was good because my income tripled. And so I did that as a first firm. It was all contingency work for sales, pre-sales, post-sales, field people, and primarily software companies. That's kind of the world I was in. And I made a shift in 96 and started doing executive level retained search. And so I abandoned the other firm, but I had 13 people working for me, and I realized that I was probably good at communicating and articulating and training people. My first trainer was Tony Burns.
Wow.
And I played that playbook just like he did. So anyway, but I woke up one day and I just realized I don't like to manage people. I don't like people asking me the same stupid question twice, and low tolerance for that. So I turned everybody into contractors and went totally virtual in Q4 of 99, which I'd like to say I was smart enough to predict the .bomb era, but I wasn't. But it was really fortunate because even though my income went down 35%, I was still just as profitable because I now had variable costs instead of fixed cost. And I've operated kind of in that mode, ever since. Yeah, that's kind of my story. I want to say something for the new people. I mean, the people that started their firms without having, the experience like I did, because I give you a huge amount of credit, the courage to do that, and, the risk associated with it, not having any money in your checking account, those types of things, and that feeling when you have a family. So kudos to you guys. It's encouraging to hear your resilience and what you've done there. So anyway, here I am 34 years later, still in recruiting, and I'll finish by this. I placed a guy a couple of years ago, and I went to go meet with him after as kind of a PR thing, and he was a younger fellow, probably late 20s, and he said, you know, I think you placed my dad years ago. And I looked at him, and his last name was unique, and I said, was your dad Norm? And he goes, yeah. I said, wow. And then I thought to myself, man, if I ever place anybody's grandchild, I'm quitting.
That's funny.
That's pretty good.
Let's see, Josh, you would raise your hand.
Yes, hi y'all. I started my company back in May of 2015 after roughly 3.5 years of working for 2 different agencies with my old business partner. He worked at the first company I worked for, and I called him up because I knew I was going to start my own company, and I was too nervous to do it on my own because I don't know, but that's what I did. And I will say this, I very much enjoyed having a business partner, but you definitely, if you're going to do it that way, you got to make sure it's the right business partner, and you have to set up the right incentives. One of the mistakes that we made was that we split everything 50-50 no matter what. So it turned into, if it was a split deal, great, it worked out. But if someone did a fill by self and then the other person got half for doing nothing, over time that can build some resentment. Plus what ended up happening through that 50-50 no matter what, we became too reliant on each other, that each other was going to do the job, and you can reap the rewards. So he ended up leaving about 1.5 years after we started the company or so, and it was very rough for me just because it was a tough time in the oil industry. I work in oil and gas, and with the change in the election, and I had some family, 2 to 3 different family emergencies over a year. But luckily, you know, I kept at it and you know, got back on the horse, if you will, and just kept making calls, doing what you have to do, skill marketing, and it worked out. But I've been there quite a few times in my life, Huff, where you're down to your last few $1,000s, and it's like, what are you going to do? But that's the thing. If you don't quit and you have a plan and you execute on the plan, really got to have a niche in your execution. You can't just be making calls to 15 different industries for 15 different jobs, etc. But you can make it in any economy. I've made it through COVID. I honored my non-compete when I started my company in 2015 because the oil industry was down back then too. So I recruited for recruiting agencies, and some of the hardest recruiting there is, by the way, and did accounting and finance. So, you know, just pick a niche and make a plan and make tons of calls until you close your first deal.
What firm did you work for that you had a non-compete?
They're no longer around, United Global Solutions. If you ever heard of Liberty Group, they were a sister company.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know we got a couple MRI people like me that might be in this group. I know that we've had them before. That I was always funny to stumble on the MRIs, because they were the ones that always enforced the non-compete for the longest time. And I had talked to a manager, actually a manager at Recruiter's office in Atlanta, Huff, and I asked him, I said, what's the deal with that? He goes, we know most of the time we can't win, but we know if we sue them, we can bleed them dry of money, and then all the other recruiters who are thinking of leaving won't do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that was their goal. Their goal was they would scare the other recruiters.
Oh yeah, no, my old bosses, there was like, you know, a silent business partner who by the end wasn't so silent, and they made sure to threaten me like, oh yeah, we will sue you if you break your non-compete, which I was completely fine with. I'm like, I had no intention of breaking my non-compete. It's 1.5 years, and I'm like, look, you guys wanted me to go start a new niche for you, and you give me no new resources, like zero. I asked for them, and so I'm gonna go do that for myself because oil is down right now. But yeah, it's a scare tactic, and you bleed them dry, of course, and
yeah.
You know, I've always been a very honorable guy, so I held up my end of the bargain and came back and, hey, look, both my previous companies no longer exist. I guess I'll start making calls to my old clients. So
what I have seen to circumvent the non-competes with all the states outlawing them is now these firms will hire you as a recruiter or a business development person, but they will not teach you full desk, right? So I was taught full desk. I think Tony was taught full desk. Anybody else who would you probably, if you probably work for a recruiting firm 20 years ago, like me or older, you were taught full desk. You were brought in and said, okay, here you go. Here's a candidate. Get this guy a job. Get yourself your own searches and recruit your own candidates. And then they gave you a little less than half everything you brought in. And now with the advent of the internet and working remote and non-competes and all that, now you see that, like, I'll see this all the time. Well, I'm a recruiter. I've been recruiting for 5 years at XYZ Corp. Have you ever developed business? No. How do I develop business? And then vice versa. Like, yeah, I've been developing, I help get clients, but I've never picked up the phone and recruit a person. So that's how they're preventing recruiters from leaving now, because since the non-competes aren't as prevalent as we saw in the past.
That's one of the main reasons I started my own company, because my previous company, we went through about three different groups of 14 to 16 different people. And every time someone quit, all my clients that no one knew about because they really weren't out there, suddenly every recruiting agency in Houston's recruiting for them. And I'm just like, it was ridiculously,
oh, wow.
Very, I hated it. Like I would have, I mean, you couldn't find these companies online sometimes. I mean, they were brand new manufacturing companies. And if you know anything about manufacturing, they are still operating in pen and paper sometimes. But
yes, they are.
and suddenly,
anybody else? Sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Josh. Sorry. No. I was just saying, does anybody else want to comment or share their story or have any questions? And, we're getting towards the end, so open it up for any type of open discussion about anything in recruitment in general that anybody wants to bring up.
Good.
We have a hand button for a reason, gentlemen. So Dominic, Ernie, and then Nick.
Well, I'll take it a different way, right? So yeah, you start your business and maybe you're a great recruiter, but you struggle in sales. So you may want to partner with somebody on that side. But another thing, what I would tell you is make sure that you get with a good CPA so you don't get a 6-figure tax bill like I did my first year. And you open that bill and you're like, wait a second. I can't, I'm not paying this, and so I went to a big, good CPA firm and figured out, okay, wait, how do all these rich people not pay these taxes? And then the next thing you know, I'm getting money coming back. I got S Corp, I got LLCs, so make sure you're prepared for that, or you're paying your taxes quarterly, whatever. Because if you get that bill,
that's right. That's why I said I'm a horrible businessman. That's how I stumbled at. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Ernie?
One other thing I was going to mention that somebody talked about, like, including their spouse or getting them to do something. Just remember one thing, and this is after 20 years of doing this plus, is this is your dream, okay? You can't make your partner, your spouse, your children, or whatever do what you're doing, because they may see the money you're making. You may be making a shitload of money. You may be making no money. But if it's not their dream, they ain't going to do it. So don't get disappointed, because as I say, it's a vision. And with vision, you're the only one that can see your vision. No one else can see it. Nobody else may want to do it. Maybe later on they'll join with you, but they got to do it on their own. You can't say, hey, do this, because it ain't going to happen, and you're just going to create heartache. And the other part about it, I would tell you, if you get in a funk and you're like, what do I do? I'm not motivated, whatever. What I do is I just clean out my desk. I move my desk around. I just take everything out, and then I bring things in little by little into my room and it's just a way of clearing my mind. That's all. And then you start at it again. But that's it.
Ernie, you're right. I think you were talking about me.
I was talking about you. No.
I'm slowly trying to create a soldier with my wife. She says she's an introvert. She's really not. She wants a desk job. Right now she has a couple health issues, so she hasn't been working.
Nick,
I'll tell you, just trying to without pushing. I'm slowly trying to get her excited, more excited about it.
You ain't gonna do it, Nick. My wife's an attorney, and she knows. She was taking French 5 in high school, Spanish, English. She's got it all down packed. She goes, I don't want to do that. So, why don't you just help me? And she goes, no. She'll do the accounting and all that stuff, but she'll do that on her own when she wants. But to keep the marriage solid, just don't force anything. This is your journey.
I agree.
And do it.
I agree. Having the thought of hiring a VA kind of scares me.
Talk to Chris Wessell.
having them
Here?
involved in everything and I don't, a trust issue. I did speak to Chris before. I have spoken to Chris.
Yeah.
Very good guy.
Me, Kelly, and Ernie split. No, me, Kelly, and Steve split a VA. If you get a good one, you're not really giving them, especially one that doesn't have any interest in being a recruiter, right? So you're not really giving them a lot of information that's going to affect you that way, unless you want them to do like all your taxes or whatever, I guess. But we used them a lot for sourcing the Boolean stuff you were talking about. Like, hey, and there's some tools out there like OneTab, for example.
Yeah.
You do a search on LinkedIn. You pull up 80 LinkedIn profiles and then collapse them in OneTab. You can send that link to your VA and say, here are 80 LinkedIn profiles. Give me the phone numbers, give me the email addresses, and put them into a see you later, Huff, and put them in an XYZ format for me. Right. So there's a lot of things you can pawn off on a VA that isn't going to affect you or allow them to affect your business or take from you, I guess is how I looked at it.
Nick, just look at it one way. And the way I look at it is this, like right now, we know we have all the same people on LinkedIn. We got the whole party. It's no big deal. You don't have any secrets. And it's kind of like being a chef. You can have all the ingredients, but it's the chef that makes a difference. So I'll give you everything. Shit, you want it, you got it. But can you make it sing? Can you play the instrument? Can you make that right burger? That's your personality, and that's you. So and then trust everybody until you can't trust them, and that's the best way to do it. And after that, if you find somebody you can't trust, and just cut them from your life.
That's a new thing where everybody. I remember actually on Dominic's podcast about how everybody's very open now. I remember when I had started, this was in the 90s, and we would go to NAPS meetings, GAPS meetings here in Georgia, and my boss would say that you do maritime. I was doing casinos and gaming at the time, which was very new and hot. So he said, say you do maritime. So people go like, what do you do search for? I'd say maritime. And they go, boats? It's like, yeah, boats. It's amazing. Anchors, things like that. People go, oh.
I do spaceships.
We were told the same thing, not that bad, but everybody would, why are you willing to share, Tom? Why are you willing to help other recruiters? I remember this at management recruiter meetings I would go to. I say, why? Like, there's more than enough business for all of us, right? They're not going to take your clients, man. Stop acting like that. If you tell someone how to use a tool or someone how to search on LinkedIn or whatever it is, that all of a sudden you're going to lose all your business. I mean, like, how conceited are you to think that you have all the business in your niche? Like, you could add 10 more people to your niche and you'd still get your clients. It's weird thinking.
In the food business, there's like, say, 55,000 food companies in the United States. I just need 5. As clients. You can have the rest. But if you still want one of my 5, then we got a problem. I'm coming over to your house, but but it's just ridiculous. But even if you steal those, you still got
it is wild to think that.
I've always believed the more people you work with, the more money you make. I try to look at everyone like partners, not competitors. If you want to compete against me, that's fine. I'll put on some gloves, but
yeah,
I
Josh,
put myself out there because other big billers wouldn't. Other big billers, I go to these meetings, they would seem untouchable, like they didn't want to talk, right? So, and I don't consider myself to be a big biller, but I always have been like, I'll talk to anybody. You could call me anytime after 4 o'clock. I'll take your phone call. And these guys that like become speak at the management recruiters meetings, you felt like they didn't want to share. They give you like a little tidbit, right? But they wouldn't share. Like, share it all. I don't care.
They're probably saying Tom's not a big biller. He doesn't keep.
Hey, I have a nice life. I'm fine. I don't know if I'm a good biller or not, but I have a nice life. On that, anybody else want to bring anything else before we go offline to our secret private group that no one gets to watch?
Congrats, Tom. I'm trailblazer.
No, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, if anybody didn't, was one of the Lohse trailblazers on LinkedIn. And I think who else was on there? Was anybody else on there?
Wasn't Wessell on there?
Yeah, Wessell was, but he's gone. Yeah, Wessell was
on
there. No, Wessell wasn't on there. No, Wessell wasn't on there.
No.
It was DSP, Ben, Maddie Loomis, Trish Tampkin. I think she was on there too. Might have been. I have to go back and look. But anyway, so going to close out like as usual. That's it for the roundtable. Smile and Dial. Please like and subscribe. That's going to help us grow. Give us a review along all you want. We thank everybody for being part of the roundtable. We have a new LinkedIn business page where we're going to have the events every week. And you'll be happy to know that no animals were harmed in the making of this podcast, although the mutt next door is living on borrowed time. So I will see you next time on the Recruiter Round.
Subscribe.
And like and subscribe. Yes, like and subscribe. Like and subscribe. Let me turn this off. Wait a second, gentlemen. Stop streaming. There we go.
Now we start serving drinks.